you're the reason that I went to my elders at the time and said, I think God is behind this. And I think Mark Baird is a catalyst to move this forward, regardless of how the lawsuit pans out. I think that the thumbprints of God are on this. And so I personally want to honor you and thank you for being here. Come tell us how this whole thing got started, and we'll go from there. Again, jot down questions if you have them. But right now, let's welcome Mark Baird.
Get the idea, and whether you end up leaving here agreeing with it or not is up to you. It's up to you and your conscience. I would like to read a prayer to you first, and I would just recite it, but I don't have that good a memory. Lord, bless your people and save them. Help them defend your cause and those who defend it. Stir up those who are afraid. Direct those who are willing to help. Strengthen those who are wavering. Give wisdom and integrity to all of us. Order all things so that they rebound to glorify God. That prayer was first uttered in public by Algernon Sidney in 1683 when he stood in front of the king and with a bunch of other people and demanded liberty. And liberty is a funny thing. I had a guy in Reading ask me, you say that word liberty all the time. Everything's liberty. What about liberty? What is liberty? Who cares? I can't define liberty. Well, I guess I thought about that for a long time, and the best I could come up with in my head, because I have this concept in my head, and liberty is a conservative word in the sense that Edmund Burke meant it. He wanted to conserve his liberty, and that was back in 1650 as well. So liberty basically is an insurance policy, if you will. It is your insurance policy that government cannot take the things that you hold most dear, and that they have no authority over those things, and that according to Heller versus DC, some policy decisions are not on the table. That's what liberty means. Liberty is the quantification in our Constitution, which, by the way, is not exactly the founding document, but it's pretty close. It is the quantification in that Constitution that government will have no power and no authority over certain things that belong to you. And the First Amendment codifies 5 of those things. Freedom of speech, freedom of press, freedom of religion, freedom to peacefully assemble and petition your government for redress of grievance. Your liberty, your insurance policy that government can't come and take your stuff, is codified in the Second Amendment, which some people believe protect all the other amendments. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So liberty is why we're here today. And once again, this is not an esoteric thing at all. It's not an abstract concept. It is the insurance policy enshrined in our founding documents that government will have no power over certain things that belong to you. Whether that is your property, and Ben Franklin said, unless property is secure, liberty can't exist. How can you defend your liberty if you don't even know what you own from one day to the next? How can you defend your liberty? How can you project your liberty if you get a paycheck this week, but next week some governmental official decides that the money that you earned should be given to someone else, and they pass a tax at midnight without a 2/3 majority, and they call it an SRA fire fee? And I was in on a conference call with George Runner one day, and there was this gal who was elderly, and she said, I live on Social Security. It's pretty much all I have besides my place, which I would bet was meager, but it was hers. I mean, it wasn't a place that we would imagine growing old in, but it belonged to her, lock, stock, and barrel. And she said, if I have to pay this money, it has to come out of my food because I have no other money. I have no extra money. How can you take this money from me and claim it's going to prevent fires when none of it goes to prevent fires? And George Runner, bless his heart, he had no explanation. I mean, he was on her side. He was powerless to do anything about it, but he understood. That's what liberty is. It is the codification of a social contract, because remember, we all are born with liberty, right? I mean, that's innate in us. But whenever we choose to join society by hook or crook, we give up some of that. Well, this is a codification insisted on by the anti-federalists so that government couldn't take certain things that we hold most dear and that people were willing to die over, and that people have been willing to die over for thousands of years and will continue to die over until we achieve liberty, and hopefully it'll be in our lifetime. That's what Jefferson is about. Securing our liberty, securing our children, our grandchildren, and their children's liberty. In other words, fulfilling our responsibility of citizens. And we have one job as citizens that's codified in the Constitution, and that is one thing: secure liberty for our posterity. So if we fail to do this, we've not only failed ourselves, we fail all those that come after, because then they accept that sliding scale, where A is the first letter in the alphabet. And if you lose a little bit of liberty, B is the first letter. And I don't know, I think we're down around S or T maybe. And that's the new normal for liberty. You have liberty unless you want a certain kind of firearm. You have liberty unless you want to carry that. In fact, there's a new bill in the works now that you may not carry an unloaded rifle in counties with less than 200,000 people. I would invite the author, yeah, that's coming. I would invite the author to go for a hike with me and my wife, because we have to get up at 5 in the morning if we want to go for a walk. There's just no other time in the day. And I've just got to confess right here, I'm already a criminal because I take an AR-15 with a full 30-round magazine with me. And why do I have the liberty to do that? Because I won't allow government to tell me no. I'm not asking their permission. I'm exercising my inalienable God-given rights. So why are we here? We're here because we hold certain truths to be self-evident, right? That all men are created equal. They're endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Among those are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And that to secure these rights, there's one reason for government: to secure the rights of the governed. And that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving all, not part, not some, not the parts they want, but not the parts they don't want, all just power from the consent of the governed. And whenever government fails to serve, it is the right and responsibility of the governed to alter or abolish that form of government, Jefferson, and to institute new government that addresses their needs more appropriately. And I'm obviously paraphrasing because I need to shorten this up. It's one thing I have a hard time doing. So, what is Jefferson? What is the history of Jefferson? And I know I'm supposed to talk about the lawsuit. Is that later, Dave, or is that now? Am I supposed to talk about the lawsuit now or later?
Now.
Okay. So what is the state of Jefferson? Jefferson represents personal responsibility. Jefferson represents everything the nanny state does not represent. Jefferson is a grassroots movement. Jefferson is a movement where people don't have titles. I don't have a title. I don't want one. What I want is liberty. What I will do for liberty is everything. What the people involved in Jefferson will do for liberty is everything. I see Jenny and Dell there. They're living proof of that. They have given so much to this. It's hard to even describe it. I can't even talk about it because I probably wouldn't be able to. I see Mark back there. I see so many leaders here. And you know why they're leaders? They're not leaders because they got a title. They're leaders because they demonstrated with their actions, their deeds, their personality, their integrity, their honor, that they were capable of helping us regain our liberty. That's why they're leaders, because they rose to the top. They don't have job titles. None of us do. We don't want them. We are grassroots. We were grassroots intentionally at the beginning because we really thought the government might come and try to round us up. And in a grassroots organization, we don't even have a membership list. We don't know who you are from one day to the next. You can come, you can go, you can contribute, you can fail to contribute. And as Dave said, not everybody's given to the legal fund. That's okay. Give with your heart. Give with your feet. Give with your hands. Do something. If you don't have money, it's okay. We'll find the money somewhere. We'll find the money either in places where we can sell something or generous people who can contribute. But we want you. We don't want your money. We want your honor and your integrity. We want what you know and what you can do and what you can achieve. That's what we want in Jefferson. And what we want it for is smaller government, quite frankly. Not bigger government. We don't want more layers, we want less layers. That's the whole point of this. And that's why we chose to do it in this way. So we came up with a way to achieve statehood, and there was a great deal of research involved in this. There are only 3 ways, really, to carve out a new state, aren't there? I mean, the first one is pick up your gun and fight. That is one way to do it. I don't see many people pumping their hand at that option, me, myself included, because I've been in fights before. And there are things that occur in war that no one should ever have to experience. And particularly us older fellas. We gave it the office. But that is an option. It's not an option we choose to pursue because, first of all, it's not viable. Second of all, we probably wouldn't win. And third of all, it's morally bankrupt. Now, if you're forced to fight when there is no victory, and as Churchill says, you're fighting to determine whether you die a slave or a free man, well, that's another story. And I've been in fights like that too. And I'm not afraid of them. I just think there's a far better way. The other 2 ways. One of them is legislative. There are only 2 ways to carve out a state, fight or legislative, right? Well, legislative, we started 3.5 years ago, Terry, in August of 2013, was it? August of 2013, and with the labor of literally tens of thousands of people who picketed, walked, showed up, went to meetings, formed committees, advertised, wrote letters, tens of thousands of emails, hundreds of thousands of phone calls, thousands and thousands of personal visits to legislators, several of whom made it very clear that they don't have face-to-face meetings with constituents. That's not something they do. Really? In a Republican form of government, you don't meet with your constituents? Honest, you could say that with a straight face to one of the people who put you in that chair? Well, when we think about it, who put them in the chair? Not the voters, the money. The money puts them in the chair because our districts are far too big. They don't care about individual voters. Your vote is irrelevant, you are irrelevant. What you think, want, and feel is also irrelevant because they don't have to listen to you to get reelected. They don't even have to listen to 5,000 of you. They probably don't have to listen to 10,000 of you. They do have to listen to CalPERS, CalSTRS, California Nurses Association, Service Employees International Union, and outfits like that, Chevron. They do have to listen to them because that's where the big checks come from. And that's just the truth. Whether you like it or not, that is the truth. And I can give you 10,000 examples of that. We have a Senate pro tem, for example, who was not afraid to stand in front of news cameras in a Senate hearing and say that half of his family was here illegally. Some of them stole their identity from other people, and that's okay because that's what it takes to get along in this state. Now, I was planning on being the getaway driver at a bank robbery, and my defense is going to be, Your Honor, I didn't rob the bank. I just drove the car, and that's what it takes to get by in this state. Isn't that okay? I don't think it would be okay for me. So where does that leave us? It leaves us in a state that does not have rule of law. There is one set of rules for you, and another set of rules for the people who impose their will upon you or govern you. We weren't okay with that. So we came up with a process, and we invented it. We pulled it out of the air. None of us having ever broken a state in half before, I'm sure mistakes were made. But we invented a process where we would get declarations from as many counties as we could. And mind you, we didn't go to counties and say, you better sign this. We went to counties and made a pitch and asked, we usually would have a town hall or 2 or 3, and we would ask people in that community, if you see the wisdom and the rightness and the honor in what we're doing, please let us know, and if you do, form a committee, and your committee will be tasked with doing the work in your county. This isn't a nanny state. This is personal responsibility at the highest level. If you don't do the work in your county may not sign a declaration. If they don't sign a declaration, you may or may not end up in Jefferson, but the odds are favoring the not. So we went about that. We did it in very different ways in each county because the doors were not always open to us. First off, we went to county supervisors and we asked them, as governmental entities who live in the sure and certain knowledge that rural counties in California are being hammered by the state government. Will you join us? My county said yes. Several other counties said yes. One county, well, they were kind of on the fence, so they said, well, we'll put this out to a referendum, and we'll honestly be able to say the people made us do it. If we have to sign that thing and make people in Sacramento mad, we can blame our constituents. And they did. And those people, June and Cooper here from Tehama County, and I can't see if Karen and Tom are here or any of them are. Okay. Patty and Mike are here. A lot of leaders are here from Tehama County, and I'll tell you what, they spent their money and their time, and they made that election happen. I guess I'm done. Okay. So they made that election happen, and they got it. Well, let's just fast forward, because I don't want to violate the time rules much. Yeah. Anyway, and we got 21 of them. We recorded them with the state, and then we started a phone calling campaign to introduce legislation for state split under Article 4, Section 3 of the United States Constitution, the only legislatively viable way to create a state. Well, needless to say, the silence was deafening. I mean, we did not get, out of 120 legislators, after tens of thousands of calls and emails and so on and so forth and all the stuff I already said, we did not get one single legislator who would even return a phone call to see what it is we wanted or why we wanted it. Not one. So, after that, we then went to judicial. That's the only other avenue. Now, I want to say this in all fairness. There is no judicial way to split a state. It's not constitutional. It can't be done that way. With a caveat. So our court case hopes to prove, and by the way, we have 3 county supervisors who have signed on as plaintiffs. They would not, their county government would not sign on. My county government, who signed the declaration and declared they wanted out of California, they got pretty weak-kneed when it came to suing the state. Now, one of them is going to be an expert witness for us. He may well join as a plaintiff. We're not sure yet. But we have a couple of county sheriffs. We've got 3 county supervisors. We have 3 towns in California, Williams, Colusa, and Fort Jones, that have declared as municipal entities. They believe that they're not represented in the state of California. We have plaintiffs now who are prepared to testify that they don't vote because they know their vote doesn't count for anything. We have plaintiffs who were evacuated when Oroville Dam was threatening to fail because the state knew for 10 years that that dam was going to fail and chose to serve the people where the money was, down south where that water goes, instead of the people who could have been killed by the dam failure. We have plaintiffs that will say that. We have individuals like myself who are prepared to testify that when I started voting at 18, there were 20 million people in California. Now there are 40 million, but my vote doesn't have any more power than it did then. In fact, it's been devalued by 50%. So our court case now is at the point where we're going to the motions hearings. The state's attorney has had, when you file a notice to sue, the state appoints a lawyer. The first thing he does is file a notice to dismiss, a motion to dismiss. Oh, this case is frivolous. It doesn't mean anything. You can't adjudicate it, so dismiss it, Your Honor. Don't waste the court's time. Well, here's his argument. 2 wrongs make a right. That's the state's argument. He says, well, we may not have enough representation in California, but since everybody gets screwed equally, there's nothing the court can do about it. The other argument he has is it's a political question, so the court's not empowered. It's a political question that falls under states' rights, and the court has no power over that. That one really got me laughing, because how did we get here to start with? Reynolds versus Sims, Baker versus Carr, Gray versus Sanders, where the court said, we are going to stick our nose in state politics and we will supervise all state elections to make sure they're equal and everybody has representation. So our response to that is, yes, it may well be a political question, but you, the federal court, stuck your nose in this to begin with, and now you better stick your nose in it again and undo what you did before. So we very quickly, so we can move on, here's what we hope to achieve. We hope to achieve a settlement out of a court action and restore the government of California to the government that the founders of this state not only intended for us to have, but physically implemented and remained in effect for around 15 years. And that is one assembly person for every 2,500 citizens and one state senator for every 6,000. Now, why those two numbers? Because that was the original government of California, and as the population grew, the legislature expanded so that no county would have less than one representative in both houses of the legislature. That's the important thing. Why would your county need a lobbyist if they could call their state senator on the phone? Why would a lobbyist have influence over your politician if he was essentially elected by your neighborhood? And it would be very easy and very cheap for you to get rid of him if he does a poor job. And I don't care what party you're in, and I don't care what you want. That doesn't matter. That part's irrelevant. What is relevant is that you have direct and meaningful contact with your representative, and you have the power to get rid of the bum if he proves to be a crook or inept or ineffective or fails to represent the people who elected him. That's the point of this. So a reporter from the Sacramento Bee says, well, your idea in order to save the state is bigger government. I said, you're totally missing the point. Oh, no, I'm not. I've got it just right. I said, well, then let's look at this mathematically. If, in your opinion, more representation equals bigger government, then zero representation would be smaller government, right? I mean, if it's not good to increase the size of the legislature, in your view, then it must be okay to reduce it. And why don't we just do what they do in Cuba? Just don't have any. And let one guy tell you what to do. So my response to that was, instead of having 5,000 staffers and 120 legislators, why don't we have 5,000 legislators and no staffers? Yeah. Well, they say it would be a crazy house. And I'm kind of thinking, gosh, in some ways that's not bad, because what happens when the government's in disarray? They're not doing anything to you that day. I mean, it should be tougher for them to pass things that oppress the people. It should be harder. That's what the court case hopes to achieve. So now let's look at the numbers real quick. If I got my way, and the lawyers, what our attorneys are saying, and we're still wrangling over the language a little bit, is we're setting these benchmarks. We have to go into court with some benchmark. Because another thing the state's attorney is saying is this is not justicatable. It's not quantifiable. And we're going, oh, bull. Anybody with a pocket calculator can come up with a plan. And we have one. No more than, I believe it was 50,000 for an assembly person, and no more than 100,000 for a senator. Now, this is important. We're not setting the bottom to that. And what we hope to do is fool a stupid and lazy state's attorney into thinking when we get to the settlement, because our goal is we must get California away from 40 and 80. Once they abandon the fact that 40 and 80 is enough, we drive a truck through the hole. So let's say we get them off that dime, and they say, well, maybe 40 and 80 isn't enough, but we don't know what is, and neither do you. Well, first of all, we say we know very well what is. And they're going to say, well, okay, 50 and 100. And we go, no. That was the top. This is what we really want. 2,500 and 6,000. And if the court goes along with that, or anything like that, anything akin to that, one for 5,000, one for 10,000, one for 10, and one for 20, we will have a situation where California has 10,000 assemblymen, maybe as many as 14,000, and between 5,000 and 7,000 state senators. What will that achieve? Well, on the surface, in their mind, it'll create chaos because the building will implode. They'll need new phones. But here's what will happen, is the state will not be able to live with the consequences of that decision, because the people who own them, the people who pay their retirement and for their big boats and planes, I mean, how does Maxine Waters buy a $5 million mansion when she makes about $168,000 a year? So the people that own them will stick their nose in that immediately and say, no, this is untenable. We cannot continue to have politics as usual if you allow this to continue. And there the state comes to us, in our view, and says, okay, fellas, what's it going to take to make you go away? We can't do what you're asking us to do. We won't do what you're asking us to do. And we say, you take your mono party, and you know you have one, and so do we, and and your supermajority, and you command your minions to vote yes on an Article 4, Section 3 state split, and then you command the 2 United States senators you purchased in an election that did not even have any opposition in it. I mean, take a look at that on its face. And you command them to introduce that into the Senate, and once that is done, we'll drop this action and go away. You can keep doing to your people whatever they allow you to do, and we in turn will form a state with a true constitutional republic with a ratio of politicians at 1 for 2,500 for the assembly and no county less than 1 state senator. Every county will have representation in both houses of government that's meaningful, that's effective, and that is easy to remove if they don't do a good job and cheap. That's something that almost never happens in California. We never lose an incumbent. It's too expensive. That's what Jefferson hopes to achieve. Now, what happens if we get handed our tail in the court case? Then we have to have a plan B. Our plan B is we're kind of considering this, and by the way, if you have an idea, don't keep it a secret. There is no genius here that can't accept new ideas. So our goal is to target a single legislator and mean it this time. We did with Steve, and he did a great job. And he got 14% of the vote with zero money and no help whatsoever from the rest of us, because we were all too darn busy trying to get declarations. I mean, this guy and his wife probably put 50,000 miles on their car, right, Diana, or more? They went to town halls at midnight, went back home, came back to a town hall in the neighboring county, went back home, and he still got 14% of the vote. So what if we put up a candidate like Steve for office, and this time everybody helped him? I think we could win. And then that candidate introduces state split legislation, and we just keep going and going and going until we get where we need to be. That is our alternate for the court case. But quite frankly, the way the court case is looking, we're going to win. Now, in closing, for those of you that don't know, the way we mapped out the case, if the federal judge has a lot of power. She is commanded by Title 28 to supply a 3-judge panel in any case that is lack of representation or dilution of vote. She is commanded by U.S. Code to apply to the chief magistrate and get a 3-judge panel. At that point, she is also commanded that by the Shapiro case, that she is not to determine whether a case has merit on her own. She is simply to determine whether a case is typically lack of representation and dilution of vote. If that finding is affirmative, we get the 3-judge panel. Title 28 also tells us that any opinion resulting from a 3-judge panel, any action or cause of action resulting from a 3-judge panel, primary jurisdiction for the appeal is the United States Supreme Court, and all cases are entitled to appeal. In other words, there is no certiorari process. We go to the Supreme Court, and the federal magistrate nor the opposition can stop us. They have to take the case. If this judge grants our motion to allow the trial to proceed, we are going to the Supreme Court, because look at it this way. If California wins, we're going to appeal. And if we win, they most certainly will appeal. So no matter who wins, this will be in the Supreme Court. Now, the Abbott versus Evenwell case tells us that at least 4 justices, now joined by Neil Gorsuch, that's majority, think that the court has been defending the principle of one man, one vote for 50 years and consistently failed because, to quote Thomas, no such right exists in the Constitution. There you go. Thank you very much.